The Doha Round's been going on now for 9 years, and a lot of progress has been made, particularly in the area of agriculture and non-agricultural market access. And we find that what is on the table right now in those areas would produce substantial gains to international trade and to the GDP of WTO member countries. But those gains are not sufficient to coalesce the types of political forces needed to enact the policy reforms. Most WTO members have probably done a lot and done enough. Most of the developing country members have committed through the formulas on agriculture and non-agricultural market access to significant and useful liberalization of trade. The major trading nations, however, both developed and developing, need to improve their offers across the board. More on agriculture, more on manufacturers, much more on services. And in particular, very little has been done on services. This is an area where the value of the Doha package could be increased very significantly just through commitments made by the major trading countries. And I think that would enhance the value of the package, provide more benefits for both developed and developing countries, and bring in very important political constituencies that would push for approval of the overall Doha agreements in their respective legislatures.
Actually, most members were already okay with the recent advances, but just a few of them expressed some concern. And for political reasons, there need to be some changes, but I don't think that it has to be large changes, except on the point that I just mentioned before. Some countries also expressed a desire of additional subjects to be treated, like for instance the EU and in particular Italy on origin appellations, these kind of things, but other countries don't want this, and probably trying to be more ambitious could jeopardize a quick result.
Ideally, it could always be better. It could be more. But I think there's enough. Let me just give you some specifics. Let me talk about agriculture, because that's known as the engine for this round. In domestic sport, you have cuts of 60 to 70%. I know that doesn't really get into the current level of what's the applied rates, but still binding that is a big step forward. But one of the other very solid result is in export subsidies, which will be eliminated, which have to be eliminated, and not only the subsidies, but related things like insurance and other things have to be brought under disciplines. Similarly, in NAMA, you see that many developing countries, I can take my own example, where we pay 10% on average duties in Europe and the US. And normally they say that the tariff rates is 1 or 2%, but then we pay 10%, and other poorer countries pay even more. Bangladesh 15%, Cambodia 17%. Now all those tariffs are going to come down to less than 4-5%. So there's a lot for many developing countries as well as for developed countries. Frankly, I feel that the political will is needed. If I look at some of the difficulties that are holding the rounds, say in case of agriculture, it was those special safeguard measures, or SSMs we call them. I don't think it's that serious a problem. I mean, either for developing countries, I mean, there was a problem with India, but the current cuts in tariffs, what they are supposed to undertake, would not really touch their applied rates.
I think it's important to recognize that where services are concerned, Doha is chasing reality and not succeeding. Countries are already much more open than their best offers indicate. What needs to be done to get from where we are today, so where we would like to be? Two things. One is a set of actions which I think need to complement the market access negotiations. Services are intensive in regulation. But the problem we have is that regulation, especially in the poorest countries, is often very weak. And secondly, that regulation has remained firmly and jealously national in scope, even as services markets are becoming globalized. That's a problem. We need, for example, to have credible programs of assistance for the poorest countries so that they can build the prudential regulation institutions in finance or the pro-competitive regulation in telecom and transport, which would ensure that they get the benefits from liberalization. Within the negotiation, I think we need to think of more creative ways of negotiating. Rather than to stick to this bilateral, sector by sector, mode by mode request and offer, I think we need to think of an approach which would capture the imagination of the business community, the development community, and still be balanced. And for that, I would suggest we think in terms of a package which would consist of a promise not to introduce no new restrictions where the markets are open already, as in cross-border trade and services, the phenomenon of outsourcing over which perpetually hangs the Damocles sword of protectionism. And secondly, where there is protection in transport, in foreign investment, to phase out that protection gradually, to pre-commit in the context of the negotiations, to do it consistently with development goals over time, in return for assistance. And third, to move on allowing people to move. And there again, to do that in the context of cooperation between host and source countries.
My assessment of the current package on trade facilitation at this point of the negotiations is a fairly comprehensive package, taking into account what is politically feasible and realistic, but nevertheless with quite a lot of hesitations among different countries about what to accept and what they would rather see dropped. The negotiations on trade facilitation deal with quite basic issues at the border. It is important to see that products that arrive at the border don't get stuck by cumbersome and lengthy procedures. Fruits and vegetables don't stay over days and days until they are rotten before they arrive to the consumer. And being able to achieve this simplification of procedures is bound to have bring quite significant gains to the world economy. One of the things that could be not exactly added but reinforced in the current text is to work towards clarifying the situation with respect to developing country commitments, the assistance and capacity building that could be provided to them so that they can live up to their commitments. The main issue is now to arrive to a point of a convergence, of agreement between the countries, and a sense of urgency to move things forward.